On Friday, Jesus was betrayed by a friend and he was sold out. On Friday, he was arrested and abandoned. Witnesses lied at multiple trials, and Jesus was falsely convicted. He was whipped, mocked, and sentenced to die a criminal's death. He carried his own cross and he was crucified. On Friday, he didn't retaliate. On Friday, he didn't call down an army of angels. He was obedient to death. He carried the weight of all the sin in the world. On Friday, he surrendered his life for me and for you and for everyone. They put a spear in his side. They pulled down his lifeless body and they sealed it in a tomb. On Friday, it seemed like all hope was over. Evil had won. All hope was lost. But 3 days later, it's not Friday anymore. All right, welcome everybody. Happy Easter. Good to have you guys with us here today. And big shout out to our Central Family locations, our Central Aliante and Kingman and Sunrise Mountain locations. Good to have you guys with us this Easter as well. Well, hey, somebody asked me recently, they say, hey, Judd, what gets you down? What gets you discouraged? And without really thinking, the thing that came out of my mouth was laundry. Anybody relate to that? How many, who gets discouraged by laundry? The never-ending, constant cycle of laundry. I do my own laundry, by the way. In our house, it's everybody for themselves. My wife did all the laundry for years, but now that our kids are grown and still at home, it's survival of the fittest at our house. And our laundry room always sort of looks like a nuclear bomb went off, when you go in there. I wish I could tell you I did laundry like an adult, but I do laundry more like a college student. I still do. I don't really separate out the whites and the colors and, the blacks over here, all the things. My wife does all that. When it's my laundry, it just all goes in. Because come on, man, if you wash it with cold, you're good, right? So just put it all in there, no problem. And here's the thing, I usually wait to do laundry until I don't have a single clean item left, and it's 911. I have to have laundry finished by tomorrow. And so I'll grab all the laundry, I'll go into the laundry room, and inevitably when I do, there's always clothes in the washer and the dryer. I mean, I live with people who think you're done with laundry if you just get it to the washer and the dryer. Anybody live with somebody like this? I'm like, what is... So, if my inner pastor is welling up and I'm in a good place emotionally and the Cowboys are winning in football season, I might fold the clothes that are in the dryer and then move the clothes from the washer to the dryer and all that. But more often than not, I'll just dump it all on the couch. And I'm like, you're on your own, people. God bless you. Here's all your stuff. I got to do my own. But laundry's discouraging. Now, if I would have thought about that question for a little while, what discourages you, I would have come up with a more substantial answer. Because, when I think about it, there's a lot of things that discourage me. Sometimes I just get discouraged by my own immaturity and selfishness. A little secret, I can act like a 2-year-old, right? And sometimes I get discouraged by my own lack of progress. I get discouraged sometimes by, goals that don't get met and things that get derailed along the way. I get discouraged by a negative comment or difficult people. I watch the news. I get discouraged, right? I get discouraged when I walk with so many families in our church going through drama and challenges and struggles and health issues and difficulties. It's easy to get discouraged. And if I'm honest, sometimes I get discouraged and I don't even know why. Anybody ever just have a bad day and people are like, what's wrong with you? You're like, I don't know. Stop talking to me. Don't even look at me. Nothing's wrong with me. Yeah. And then you get discouraged for a day, and sometimes it can become a couple days, and then it can become a season, and now you're just sort of in a funk. And I think if I'm not careful, my temptation, even though I'm a follower of Jesus, is I can live in the discouragement and the defeat in my life more than I live in the victory of my faith. And so I want to talk this Easter about how we do have victory in our faith in Jesus. Maybe you're here today, maybe you're a believer in Jesus. Maybe some of you are here, you're not yet a believer in Jesus. You see how I worded that? Because I'm believing that that door is still open for you and you could step through that door. And I believe as we walk in faith and grow in our faith, that we discover more of what it is to live a victorious life that God has for us. Doesn't mean we won't face problems and difficulties, but we can find hope. And Easter is a great reminder of the victory God has achieved for us. So I want to look with you back to the original Easter story, Easter Sunday morning, the first Easter Sunday. We're going to meet two very discouraged disciples or followers of Jesus. And they're walking along on a road that has now become known as the road to Emmaus. They're leaving the city of Jerusalem. They're walking on this road. It's Sunday at some point in time, and a stranger comes up and begins to walk with them. Check this out. Luke chapter 24, beginning in verse 17. We're going to read this together, and when I get to the red word, I'll just ask you to say it real loud here with me. But he says, the stranger, it says, he asked them, "What are you discussing so intently as you walk along?" And look at this. They stopped short, sadness written across their faces. They're discouraged. These guys are down. And they say, one of them, Cleopas, replied, "You must be the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about all the things that have happened there the last few days." And then they go on, they tell him about this Jesus who was a prophet and a healer and a great teacher, and the religious elite had him crucified. And then it says this, look at this. It says, "We had" what? Hoped. You see that? We had hoped he was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. This all happened 3 days ago. Had hoped, past tense. We don't hope anymore. Had believed, past tense. We don't know if we can believe anymore. They're discouraged and they're devastated because on Friday they heard or they saw that Jesus had been betrayed and handed over, had gone through these sham trials, had been crucified, and now had been put in a tomb. And so in the frustration, in the angst of it all, they're like, we had hoped he was the Messiah. But check it out. There's a little twist to the story because the gospel writer Luke tells us that the stranger walking alongside them is actually Jesus resurrected, but he's incognito. God doesn't allow them to know that this stranger is Jesus. Hello. So they're walking along on Easter Sunday and like Jesus strolls up and basically says, "What's up?" And they're like, "It's bad, man. It's really bad. They placed him in a tomb. How could you not know this? All of Jerusalem is talking about this. Like the news on the street is bad." And it's like they're living in Friday, but now it's Sunday. And I think that's a temptation for all of us, right? It's easy to live in the past. It's easy to live in the hurt. It's easy to live in the frustration. It's easy to live in what he did or what she did or what he said or what she said or what they said or what they didn't say. You know, it's easy to live in bitterness and unforgiveness. It's easy to carry the weight of all the stress and the pressure like everything depends on you. Listen, it's easy to live in defeat. That's living on Friday, but today we're challenged to walk in victory because it's not Friday anymore. It's not Friday anymore. Don't let what happened yesterday keep you from what God can do in your life today. Don't let what happened yesterday keep you from what God can do in your life today. And so how do we push back on discouragement and experience more of the victory of Easter? Here's a couple thoughts from this story on the road to Emmaus that first Easter. The first one is this: keep walking in faith. Sometimes you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other, even when it's hard, even when it's discouraging. You know, life is filled with unexpected things, and unexpected things can be incredibly discouraging. I think about just last year, one like crazy story that comes to mind is my daughter's like Honda Civics, old Honda Civic, sits out in our driveway, and she starts having issues with it, and so we take it to the shop, and they're like, Judd, like rats have chewed through all the wiring in the engine of your car. I'm like, what? They literally had to take the engine out. It was so bad, and do all this work. It cost a fortune. It was crazy. It took forever. They put the car back together. The whole time I'm like, should we just sell the thing? Like, what? Can we sell it? Harvest it for pieces or something? I don't know. They put it all back together. We get it home, and the guy wasn't very helpful at the shop. I'm like, so what do you do? Like, I never heard rats like chewing through the wires of your car. Like what am I supposed to do? Do you have like a guidebook or something? Like, is there a website I can go through? He's like, I don't know. We don't really see this. Well, you're seeing it now, bro. And the guy's like, there's a thing like you can get on Amazon that like emits a signal, and some people say that works, like rodents hear it and they won't go near your car. And I'm like, okay. He's like, there's stuff you can spray. You have to. So I go back, I start doing all the research, and yeah, you can spray like peppermint oil. That's what they recommend, but you got to spray that stuff like, every few days. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, who needs one more thing that you now have to do every few days, right? What are you doing? Hang on, I gotta go spray my car with peppermint oil. I'm not doing that. Put Irish Spring soap everywhere because somebody said it keeps the rats away. I'm not doing that. Anyway, I got this device, hooked it up to the battery of my car, and hooked it up, and it's like a rodent repeller, and it blinks this light, and it sends this signal, sends the rodents away. I'm like, all right, we're good, we're done. So, that's it. And then about 2 months later, my daughter's like, hey, my car isn't running right again. It's having all these issues. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. We take the car back, and they have chewed through the wires again, a second time. At this point, I'm like, all right, Lord, what is the message that I need to receive in this moment? I couldn't believe it, man. It cost a fortune. We finally got the thing all put back together again. And I want you to know after that, it was full on war. I mean, it was war at my house with the rats. I'm now out there every Saturday to this day. I do it religiously. I go spray her engine down with peppermint oil. I'm like, I'm the guy. I'll do anything now because I can't afford for this to happen again, right? I got Irish Spring soap in the garage. Any conspiracy theory I can find online, I will engage in it. I got traps everywhere. I've caught 3 of them, by the way, because I'm not messing around. I went Rambo on the rat population in our neighborhood, bro. You see me in the driveway driving by my house, sitting out there at night with black on my face. You know what's going on. It's game over. Because look, I love all of God's creatures, right? But you come in my driveway, little rat, and you attack my car, I'll kill you, I'll kill your mom, I'll kill your dad, your brother, your cousin, I'll kill everybody you ever loved. Just say it. Don't write me, PETA, people. But man, I was so discouraged going through all that because I'm like, I don't know what to do, and I can't afford for this to happen again. We get discouraged, unexpected things happen. Look, these disciples are walking along on the road to Emmaus, and they just didn't expect this to happen, even though Jesus had told them, his disciples, hey, I'm gonna be crucified, I'll rise again on the 3rd day. He had clearly laid it out. But they weren't dialing in. And they had already heard about the rumors from that morning that his tomb was empty. In fact, this is what they say to the stranger. Luke chapter 24, beginning in verse 22. Help me out on this red word. It says, they're talking to the stranger, and they say, then some of the women, some women from our group of his followers were at his tomb early this morning, and they came back with a what? An amazing report. They said his body was missing, and they had seen angels who told them Jesus is alive. So these 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus have already heard the Easter message. They just don't fully believe it yet, right? They've heard the thing, but they're like, I don't know. It's pretty out there. It's pretty amazing, but I don't know. And so Jesus, the stranger, calls them foolish. And it says he shows them as they walk along from the scriptures, from Moses and the prophets, from the Old Testament, all the places where it says the Messiah would suffer and die before he would enter into his glory. So Jesus just takes them to school. And he's like, look, this was all written. This was all laid out, but they still don't know who he is. Now, one of the things that I find fascinating is the fact that Jesus is walking with them at all. I mean, Jesus, who's risen from the dead, he could appear to anybody, right? He could appear to a king or to some ancient influencer, some TikToker, like, hey, yo, catch this, right? Like he could have appeared to anybody he wanted to, some ancient celebrity. And instead, he appears to these two disciples, okay? One of them, we know their name. His name was Cleopas. His name is never mentioned in the Bible before or after this, okay? The other one, we don't even know who it was, just an anonymous disciple. And they're walking along on the road to a village named Emmaus. What do we know about Emmaus? Next to nothing. In fact, Luke's the one who tells us it's 7 miles from Jerusalem. Otherwise, it's just completely disappeared from kind of, history. And so it's insignificant people going to an insignificant place that Jesus chooses to walk with on Easter Sunday, the first Easter Sunday. And can I suggest it just reminds us all that to God, nobody is insignificant and nowhere is insignificant. I mean, it's a cool thought. Who does Jesus appear to? Not even his best disciples. Not Peter, not John. First, he appears to these two dudes on the road to Emmaus, and he walks with them. And they don't even know it's him. Maybe you're here today, and maybe you know what it is to feel insignificant, or you're in a season of your life where you're just questioning your value or your purpose or your worth. Can I suggest to you that Jesus is often walking beside us even when we don't realize it? That he's walking with us even when we don't recognize it. That he's nudging and helping and encouraging. And sometimes you look back at the hardest seasons of your life and you realize you didn't realize it at the moment, but he was actually carrying you through that moment. And so on the road to Emmaus, Jesus, he's incognito, but he's walking. And what did those disciples needed to do? They just needed to keep walking with him. Look, I believe for many of us today, Jesus is walking with you, but are you walking with him? I think you walk with him when you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, that you confess with your mouth, as the book of Romans says in the New Testament, that Jesus is Lord. You believe in him when you seek to honor him with your life, when you seek to follow him in faith. You believe in him, you walk with him when you surrender your life and trust that he is who he says he is. And you believe in him, you walk with him when you start to believe who he says you are. In fact, I went through the New Testament and found all the times that it says you are as a follower of Jesus today. And here's what it says. It says literally, you are Jesus' friends. You are children of God. You are children of light. You are members of God's family. You are holy and blameless, standing before God without a single fault. You're God's people. You're the salt of the earth. You're the light of the world. You're the branches that bear fruit. You're God's field. You're God's building. You're living stones in God's temple. You're holy priests. You're a holy nation. You're a chosen people. You're God's workers. You're Christ's ambassadors. You're true ministers of God, united with Christ. You're a part of his body, living by his spirit. You're God's masterpiece. You are faithful ones, meant for better things. You're receiving a kingdom that is unshakable. You're looking forward to a home that has not yet come. You are heirs of God's glory. You are set free from slavery to sin. You are truly free. That's who he says you are. He's walking with you, but are you walking with him? And when we're discouraged, sometimes we just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep believing and keep walking with him today. And then the second thing we see in this story, if you want to push back on discouragement, is to live in the light of Sunday. Just to live in the light of Sunday. When I was growing up, we had this phrase, TGIF. Anybody remember this? Thank God it's what? Thank God it's Friday. Friday, like school was out, hope a lot of people got off work back then. It's like you had the weekend and you could just hang out and do weekend things. Thank God it's Friday. But today we say thank God for Sunday. Turn to the person next to you and say, thank God for Sunday. And specifically for Easter Sunday. These disciples are walking along with Jesus and they finally get to Emmaus, their hometown. And the stranger looks like he's gonna keep walking, but they plead with him, hey, come to our house, come spend the night with us, let's keep talking together. And so he goes to their house, they go in, they sit down, they're eventually gonna eat together, and the stranger says, let me pray for the food. So he blesses the food, and then he takes the bread, and he breaks it, and he hands the bread to them, and suddenly their eyes are opened. And the text says they realize, it's him. What? And then it says he disappeared. Poof. You gotta like turn to you're like, hey man, are we okay? Or you're pushing the guy next to you. We're all right. So within the hour, it says those two disciples truck back to Jerusalem because they're like, we got to tell all the others what just happened. This is crazy, right? So they go back to Jerusalem. They go find the other disciples and they gather with them. They're sharing stories. And then it says Jesus appears to them and starts explaining to all of them what just happened. And then we get to Luke chapter 24. And this is from the resurrected Jesus' mouth as he shares to his disciples the point of his life, death, and resurrection. He says, yes, it was written long ago that the Messiah would suffer and die and rise from the dead on the third day. It was also written that this message would be proclaimed in the authority of his name to all the nations, beginning in Jerusalem. And look, this is the message. He says, there is what? Forgiveness of sins for all who repent. You are witnesses of all these things. I mean, Jesus just, what was the point of Christmas and Christ's life and of his death and of Easter and his resurrection? He just gives it to you in just a few words, in one sentence. He says there's forgiveness of sins for all who repent. To repent means to turn, to do a 180 in your life, to turn back to God. And through Christ and his sacrifice and what he has done, we can receive his forgiveness, God's mercy, God's grace moving and working in our lives, and our lives can be transformed. That forgiveness is available. This is the point from Jesus' own lips. You know, on Friday, Jesus was betrayed by a friend and he was sold out. On Friday, he was arrested and abandoned. Witnesses lied at multiple trials, and Jesus was falsely convicted. He was whipped, mocked, and sentenced to die a criminal's death. He carried his own cross and he was crucified. On Friday, he didn't retaliate. On Friday, he didn't call down an army of angels. He was obedient to death. He carried the weight of all the sin in the world. On Friday, he surrendered his life for me and for you and for everyone. They put a spear in his side. They pulled down his lifeless body and they sealed it in a tomb. On Friday, it seemed like all hope was over. Evil had won. All hope was lost. But 3 days later, it's not Friday anymore. And on Sunday, the tombstone rolled away. On Sunday, Jesus walked out of the grave. On Sunday, the angel declared to the women at the tomb, why are you looking for the living among the dead? He's not here, he is risen. The women are amazed on Sunday. They run to tell the others. Peter, John, and the disciples run to the tomb to inspect it. On Sunday, 2 discouraged disciples walked along the road to Emmaus, but they didn't walk alone. The resurrected Jesus walks with them. And when he broke bread with them, a picture of how his body was broken for us, a picture of the Last Supper and communion. They recognized him as Jesus and hope was reborn. Listen, on Sunday, evil was defeated, death lost its sting, the grave lost its power. God changed history forever. He made a way where there was no way. That's Sunday. And because of Sunday, today we can live with hope. Today we can know God's forgiveness and his grace. Today we can remember that he calls us, that his spirit helps us, that his voice guides us, that he goes before us and behind us, that he's below us and above us, that his strength is available, that his purpose is still prevailing, that his favor can bless, that his plans are unfolding, that his church is advancing, that his fame is spreading. Listen, today his name is great. Today it's the name above all names. Today he's the ruler of all the kings of the earth. Today he's the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning in the end. And today his grace is going out into the world to save and redeem and restore. Today we can walk in victory. It doesn't mean we don't have to do laundry or dishes or face tough medical diagnoses, or get hard news at work, or go through tough situations with our loved ones. Doesn't mean we won't face trouble. But Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart. He said, I have overcome the world. And so our faith teaches us that if we will lean on God and surrender to him and trust him, if we'll keep walking in faith, our faith teaches that we'll find hope and forgiveness and meaning, and that we can also lean on one another to find the encouragement we need to keep going, so that we don't let what happened yesterday rob us of what God can do in our lives today.